your chairs a bit. But what three organizations that you represent actually have something in common. If it comes to GIA, it is there to create clarity about what a diamond is. David, your organization is all about promoting the diamond and making sure that consumers understand what diamonds are and why they are such important symbols of love. And CIBJO, represented by my former business partner of 20 years, I must tell you, you don't know that maybe, was behind the scenes when the CIBJO, the World Jewelry Confederation, created their guidelines for how to deal with lab-grown diamonds, and also with diamonds, of course. The Diamond Commission, the head of the Diamond Commission is Louis Chantal of CIBJO, is also with us. We all have multiple hats here. So, Tom, to start with you quickly, GIA is not an organization to pick a fight, but a lot of people like to pick a fight with GIA, which actually is more or less what Martin did during his speech yesterday. Why is GIA doing with grading of lab-grown as it does, and where do you think it's going? And how is the consumer going to be guaranteed that he's getting what the information that he needs, and the retailer? Can you say briefly something about that?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, and thanks for starting with an easy question. So, related to man-made diamonds, GIA has been following these developments. In fact, in the archives, I found a letter in January of 1956, so 1 month after General Electric introduced, and they used man-made diamonds, by the way, at the time. So we've been really paying attention to those developments since then. They came to us in 1971 with the first gem quality synthetic diamonds. We actually, at that time, in an entry that's still available for anybody who wants to read, talked about the differences, and we used the GIA grading system at that time just to describe them. So the next phase, into the 1980s, of course, we saw much more development, first with Japanese and Sumitomo, and others started to produce synthetic diamonds for gem quality use. And fast forwarding, it was 2007, we began to issue the first reports for man-made or laboratory-grown diamonds. At that time, we used more general terms, but the foundation was still the GIA system that was created decades before. And then, of course, a couple of years ago, we used the exact same terminology. So, and the fundamental question was, why have we done that? And GIA is as you know, is a nonprofit public benefit company or organization to ultimately to educate the consumer. Felt that our board and executive team felt that was an important step. And in some ways we felt, well, look, if we provided clear information, and I think both Bruce and Martin even talks about it, that the facts ultimately will tell the story of both products. And I think, as Bruce pointed out, it's a manufactured product. And I often say that the history of a man-made diamond, a laboratory-grown diamond, I see history repeating itself. We've seen the story play out with synthetic ruby more than 100 years ago, sapphire, emerald, alexandrite,
so,
etc.
I guess that GIA doesn't really want to grade synthetic rubies, sapphires, and emeralds. Why? And from the bottom up, the demand is growing. That actually GIA should actually stop doing this. Is that not something that could be considered? Just stop grading synthetic diamonds in order to really set them apart from the natural product that we are all cherish so much and try to develop further.
So I think if there is consumer demand, and as I said, as a public benefit organization, as a nonprofit, we will continue to. But I will tell you, I'm already seeing a trend, I think driven by the reduction in the prices that's been mentioned. I see the reporting that we may do in the future future evolving. So it could be that they're just branded marks that we would put in the diamonds and some general statement attesting that more like a quality control report, similar that happens with other manufactured products. So I frankly think that's ultimately where we'll probably end up, especially with the prices.
You're being very diplomatic, but some developments will arise, I guess.
I believe they will, yes.
David, what is your position on this as standing at the head of the Natural Diamond Council about why would they grade lab grown at all? Isn't it detrimental to what we try to do for natural diamonds? And we are in this business in order to set them aside and do what we do best with natural.
I think it's up to GIA. I in no way I have a lot of respect for GIA, so each entity within this industry, it's up to them how they react to market conditions. I think, and I agree with what Martin said, I think I agree with what we all say, is that the most important thing is the consumer differentiation. And therefore I think we and how we communicate GIA in terms of how they do their grading reports, I think it's just getting more and more important. And the risk is if we don't do that, we are going to lose the trust of the consumer. And so I think therefore it's up to GIA how they choose to do that, how they look at it, how they do it. I think it's up to retailers to look at how they sell, how they present visually in their presentation cases. For those of you that were in the presentation yesterday, part of the mystery shopper report that we did yesterday, that I presented yesterday that I didn't talk to, was actually the differentiation between lab-growns and natural diamonds in presentation cases. And one of the most worrying things about that report was that that in the majority of cases, the mystery shopper, the consumer, didn't believe there was sufficient differentiation between natural and lab-grown to clearly understand they are two different products.
Yeah.
So for me, it's up to GIA, respect them for what they do.
What percentages did you see? Was there in numbers?
I can't remember, it was somewhere in the low 40s from memory, but it was definitely less than half did the consumer feel that it was clear enough. And we've all been into stores. And I've been into stores where I've got a lab-grown diamond and a natural diamond side by side in a case. And on a Saturday afternoon, there's no way that the sales professionals in that store knew what they were putting back into the case and where. No way. And that's along with other things, is our biggest concern.
All three organizations are also in education. Stephen, give us a very brief overview of what CIBJO has done in order to tackle the issue of consumer education and retailers or the education on lab grown, and what institutions have been put in place in order to make this happen, and what documents have been created. I think a lot of our diamond dealers and members of our industry are not very well aware of what CIBJO is doing, so give it 2 minutes, 3 minutes to talk about that.
Sure. In about 2017, it was actually at the decision was made together with De Beers at the time. We put together a working group to create a guide for the laboratory-grown diamond industry. At the time, there was even discussion what we were going to call it. The tendency in the industry, or the preference of the industry, was certainly to call it synthetic, but there was a movement in the United States to shift the name to laboratory-grown, which we eventually agreed to. The purpose of the document was essentially to create a set of guidelines by which to protect consumer confidence. And the idea was that to provide guidelines to anybody in the industry, anywhere up and down the pipeline, how to handle the diamonds in such a way that the mixing of the two products would not be possible. That included, going down to brass tacks, like David just said over here, that in a jewelry store, goods should not be stored in the same display case at a trade show. If you are presenting both laboratory grown and natural diamonds, they should be presented differently. But it also got into a range of different topics, one of which came down to grading. The position that was taken by the committee, which included both members of the natural diamond industry and also the laboratory-grown diamond industry, was that a person buying a product any manufactured product does have the right to know what their product is. I mean, if you buy a car, you're going to get a detailed report of how that car is constructed, and also of the performance of different parts of the car, and you're entitled to that. And we said anybody buying a laboratory grown stone is entitled to the same product. But there was a question about even using the word grading, which we within the committee felt implied that there was an element of rarity in the stone. So we put through guidelines essentially for a grading for a type of grading report, but we said we called it a product specification report, not a grading report. And in fact, when GIA brought out and presented its own report, we had a meeting with GIA. Tom, I think you were on that call as well, right? Where we essentially said, please don't call it a grading report. And GIA came back to us after a while and said they agreed to change the name. And Tom can back me up over here, that from being a diamond grading report to be a laboratory grown diamond grading report to a laboratory grown diamond report.
But isn't CIBJO and isn't GIA also, and I think David, you're also worried about what Martin actually said, the prestige of our industry is in danger of how lab growing can affect it. And because of the lack of differentiation among consumers, and the report and the research that you did is actually very, shows that very clearly. Isn't there also a role for GIA to really take a lead role in that in order to make sure that the prestige of the industry is protected, and that as an educator also you have a role to play?
Yeah, Cobb, I think you make a very good point, and we have recognized our need to accelerate that education. And I think during the pandemic we actually did through webinars, and one of our most popular programs today is a program with laboratory grown diamonds and the identification techniques, and not only that is how to talk about them in the most accurate way. And I would just make another point in GI's role. I sometimes look at GI as a three-legged stool. There's research, education, and laboratory services, with research underpinning the other two. And as you probably know, Mark talked about, of course, we do instrument development. We have deep knowledge of, as I suggested earlier, of the physical differences. We grow synthetic diamond to help inform our instruments, and we are doing more to provide education and differentiation. But I would also say, as an industry, we all need to be doing that. In many ways, the man-made diamond industry did a better job at uniting and selling their product, and I think the natural diamond industry, including I think GI doing their role in education, I think could have done a much better job, and I think we all need to do that.
Well, I think you give me an opening to ask a question to David, because David came in 2 years ago, 3 years ago now.
3, yeah.
And actually, the predecessor of the National Diamond Council has done so much warring against lab growing that my argument as a strategist is always, you have been giving them so much, you have just been advertising the lab growing industry by fighting them, instead of trying to encapsulate them and bring them in and make them part of your organization so you can control them and guide them and make them part of the industry. Like the AGTA, the American Gem Trade Association, did with colored gemstones already in the 70s, and they were clever enough to do that. So you were in a position where you suddenly found yourself in a situation where lab-grown diamonds were already up there from a publicity point of view, and a united industry, very easy to unite. And so your next project is going to try and deconstruct a lot of the myths that have been created around lab-grown. In a few words, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, and so when we launched the Natural Diamond Council, we felt that by creating noise with lab-growns, it was just giving the lab-growns the platform to tell their story. And whilst it's very what's the word I'm looking for? Whilst it's very tempting to go making a lot of noise and shouting and talking about lab-grown diamonds, it's just giving them the platform, to be able to talk about themselves, and it makes the natural diamond industry look out of date, look out of control. These are disruptors. Their whole purpose is disruption. And if we allow them to disrupt, to Bruce's story earlier on, about the Swiss watch industry, the awakening for the Swiss watch industry in the context of wearable technology was that what you wear on your wrist isn't to tell the time. The whole point of what's on your wrist is not to tell the time. What's on my wrist doesn't tell the time as well as my phone. It doesn't update itself when I travel between countries. The moment the Swiss watch industry realised that people aren't buying my watch to tell the time, they realised we're there for a statement, we're there for the values, what does this represent? And then the awakening was incredible. So for us, intentionally, was not to create a noise against lab-grown diamonds. So the big campaign we're going to be bringing out in April is to correct some of the stories. It's not to take war, it's using third-party data. It is going to be drawing attention to the pricing dynamics in the lab-grown market. It is going to be drawing attention to where lab-grown diamonds are produced. But it's based on research. We know that in the US particularly, most consumers have the wrong perception about lab-grown diamonds. So we have a duty, I think, along with everybody in the industry, to make sure the consumer has the facts and then makes the choice that's right for them. And there will be consumers that the lab-grown diamond is the right choice for them. But give them the right facts and allow them to make the right choice. And we are confident enough in natural diamonds that we believe that most will buy natural diamonds. And again, I think perspective is always a good thing when you look at data. If you look over the last 2 years, lab-grown diamonds have gone up without a doubt, and the percentage growth is incredible. The natural diamond industry has had record years in that timescale. And if you look at pre-pandemic, the natural diamond industry is way ahead of where it was pre-pandemic. So it kind of somewhat validates. 3 years ago, no one was using the term natural diamonds. And I remember when I first came in, I said, well, what do we call this new DPA? No one was using the term natural in diamonds, it was mined diamonds. And now it's very encouraging to hear that we just use the term natural diamonds like it's always been around, and probably forget how recently. So we can make a difference, we are making a difference, but we just need to deal in the facts, not emotion when it comes to lab-grown. And we all know where lab-grown diamonds will end up in the marketplace.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have been instructed.
Go ahead. Add to that. I think the introduction of the digital watch, the quartz watch, it actually did have an initial impact on the Swiss watch industry. There was a big decline for a couple of years until it rebounded. And I think there's somewhat similar situation now. The other thing is that, again, I think we've done poorly as overall as an industry. I think GIA has tried. Bruce also alluded to it, is telling the story of natural diamond. It's not 48 hours it took to make, or it's 1 to 3 billion years old, that erupted at near the speed of sound to get to the surface. And the social benefit of it is what we're missing. And when we talk about synthetic diamond, the largest producer in China, who's the largest producer in the world, produced 2,000 tons of synthetic diamond a year. Now, obviously, most of that is for industrial grit and so on. But those kind of, it's just telling those kind of facts, I think, that will create this differentiation.
Yes, very well.